What was Jotham's fable, and how did this apply to Abimelech and the men of Shechem? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Judges on Walking Through the Bible. The glory of His cross. Today we're going to be discussing Judges 9 verses 7 to 21. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Judges 9 verse 7. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Judges chapter 9, beginning at verse 7. Now when they told Jotham, he went and stood on the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted his voice and cried out, and he said to them, Listen to me, you men of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees once went forth to anoint a king over them. And they said to the olive tree, Reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, Should I cease giving my oil, with which they honor God and men, and go to sway over trees? Then the trees said to the fig tree, You come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, Should I cease my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to sway over trees? Then the trees said to the vine, You come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, Should I cease my new wine, which cheers both God and men, and go to sway over trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, You come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, If in truth you anoint me as king over you, then come and take shelter in my shade. But if not, let fire come out from the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you have acted in truth and sincerity in making Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done to him as he deserves, for my father fought for you, risked his life, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, but you have risen up against my father's house this day, and killed his 70 sons on one stone, and made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If then you have acted in truth and sincerity with Jerubbaal and his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come from Abimelech, and devour the men of Shechem and Beth-Milo, and let fire come from the men of Shechem and Beth-Milo, and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled, and he went to Beer, and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech, his brother. Before Gideon died, he refused to be made Israel's king, and he refused to allow Israel to make his children kings. However, there was a political rivalry between Manasseh and Ephraim that Abimelech, Gideon's son, through a concubine of Shechem, sought to exploit. Shechem was a town in Ephraim, and so while Abimelech was born of Gideon and could be considered of the tribe of Manasseh, because his mother was from Shechem, he could also claim kinship from the tribe of Ephraim, and the men of Shechem especially. This led him, upon his father's death, to propose to the men of Shechem the following: Would it be better that the 70 sons of Gideon rule over you, or one person, namely himself? By rule, we don't mean here as king in the sense that we know in Scripture, but as one that had dominion or influence. The men of Shechem naturally said one person, and were inclined to follow after Abimelech, since he was their kinsman. Abimelech, of course, accepted, and then, with some funds from the idol temple, hired some men who were willing to go with him to kill his brothers. And this they did, with the exception of one, Jotham, who hid himself. It is this Jotham that we meet in today's reading. On the top of Mount Gerizim, which overlooked the valley, on top of which one could speak loudly and be heard in the valley below, Jotham came and told a fable. A fable is a short story, typically with plants or animals as characters that convey to listeners a moral. It is different than a parable, for a parable is a comparison between two things, but is based in what we actually see in reality. There are only 2 fables in the Scriptures, the other which is found in 2 Kings 14. In Jotham's fable, we have the trees of the field going out wanting to anoint a king. They first approach the olive tree, but the olive tree refuses, because in order to become king, it would have to cease giving oil, which honors God and men through their use. You can think of the reason for this, is that a king is over the trees, so the olive tree, to be over the trees, would have to uproot itself, thus meaning it could no longer produce olive oil. The trees then go to the fig tree with the same request and get a similar answer. Perhaps then, instead of a tree, a vine would be better suited. So the trees approach the grapevine, but it too refuses because it would have to stop producing products with which both cheers God and men. For remember that the products of the grapes are used in drink offerings. Finally, the trees approach the bramble. The bramble is a prickly shrub that produces no fruit, whose only use by men is really to be used for burning something. The bramble, when asked to rule over the trees, said that if in truth, meaning that if it is the right thing for you to anoint me as king, then come and take shelter in my shade. The bramble gives no actual shade, and so when the bramble said this, the trees should have reconsidered making this bramble king. If, however, it was not the right thing to anoint me as king, the bramble said, let fire come out from the bramble and devour the trees of Lebanon, something that a bramble does have the ability to do. What could Jotham be meaning by telling this fable? Well, Gideon and his sons, represented by the olive tree, the fig tree, and the grapevine, all had declined being king over Israel, for their use was far better. Abimelech, however, was the bramble, and being in league with the bramble exposed the men of Shechem to great harm, for he would bring them no shade or protection, but he did have the ability to destroy them. Jotham said that if making Abimelech king was the right thing to do, and thought that murdering the house of Gideon, a house whose leader delivered them from the Midianites all those years earlier, was the right way to repay Gideon for his bravery, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him rejoice in you. However, if making Abimelech king and killing Gideon's house was not the right thing to do, in other words, it was not done in truth, then let fire come out from Abimelech and destroy you all, and let fire come out from you and destroy Abimelech. And of course, making Abimelech king and killing Gideon's family was not the right thing to do. And so we'll see how this curse comes to pass later on in this chapter. For now, though, Jotham knows that not only his appearing, but the fable he told puts his life in danger, so he fled to Beer, which would be far enough away from Abimelech in order for him not to be killed. We don't know exactly where this place is, with some placing it in Benjamin or even beyond the Jordan. Wherever it was far enough away that Jotham would be safe. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Judges chapter 9, verses 22 to 33, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.